I'm here today in historic Frankfort, Kentucky to visit the final resting place of my childhood crush, the one and only Miss Elizabeth. If you grew up watching professional wrestling in the 80s and early 90s, namely WWF, you absolutely would remember the one and only Miss Elizabeth. She was named the First Lady of Wrestling. She was born November 19th, 1960, right here in Frankfort, Kentucky. This is a beautiful historic town with a lot of hills and a lot of woods. It's a very beautiful area. She actually met Macho Man Randy Savage, who she would later marry, at a gym where he came in to work out, and she was working at the desk, and she mentioned something about his eyes being red, and of course Macho Man said, "Well, you should see him from the inside," or something along those lines. And some reason that just kind of made her interested in Macho Man. So he actually got her into the wrestling business, where she started as a journalist or an interviewer behind the scenes. And then when Macho Man made his debut in WWF, he came down to the ring, and all of these managers came down because they wanted to be his manager. They wanted to sign Macho Man and be his manager, basically. But he surprised them and introduced a manager that he already had. And when his manager came from behind the curtain, it was this petite, beautiful brunette named Elizabeth Ann Hewlett, who we would come to know as Miss Elizabeth. Now, of course, if you remember wrestling back then, you remember the Mega Powers, where Hogan and Macho Man teamed up, and Hogan hoisted Elizabeth up on Macho Man's shoulder during one of their big wins. And then, of course, the time where the Mega Powers imploded, where they got in a big argument because Macho Man was jealous of Hogan, and they fought each other in one of the WrestleManias, I believe. And Macho Man attacked Hogan in the back of one of the wrestling events when he was caring for Miss Elizabeth, who had been inadvertently hit by Macho Man when he was thrown out of the ring. And then, of course, there was the time where there was the George the Animal Steele and Randy Savage feud, where George the Animal Steele loved Elizabeth, and he just kept kidnapping her and taking her to the back and things like that. Now, they were married in real life, and they actually had a kayfabe on-screen marriage that they did in the ring, but nobody really knew at that time that they were actually already married and had been for a while. And their marriage kind of became tumultuous. Macho Man was very, very, very protective of her, and it's been said that he would keep her kind of locked in rooms in the back while he went out to wrestle. And that wasn't so much, keeping her locked in as it was keeping the boys out. He was very protective of her. He basically just traveled with her and not so much the boys. But they eventually got divorced, and Elizabeth went down to spend time with Hulk Hogan and his then wife, Linda, in Florida. And Macho Man came down there because he was under the impression that there was another guy, and the Hogans lied for Liz and said that she was with somebody else when she was indeed on a date. But they were split up at that time, and they eventually get divorced, and Macho Man goes over to WCW with half of the WWF roster at that time. That's when Nitro and Raw were competing, and Macho Man brought Elizabeth over to work with the NWO, and they still got along as friends and colleagues. And she hooked up with Lex Luger at that point. Her and Lex started working an angle together, and where I believe she was his manager, and they got close. And I think Lex was married, or he had a girlfriend at that time. So there was definitely some cheating going on. People in the back knew about this, and they really didn't approve of this relationship. I think Liz may have been married too at this time to somebody else, or she was with another man at this time as well. So I think they were both cheating on their others with each other. And they eventually get together, and I think Elizabeth moves in with Lex at his condo, which I believe was in Georgia. And one night, they took some pills and drank some champagne, and it was kind of late in the night, and Liz was watching a movie, and Lex got up to make some food, and when he came back, Elizabeth wasn't breathing. She had basically passed away in that time that he got up to make food, and she basically overdosed on prescription pills and champagne, and Lex calls 911, and of course he's all nervous.
She's laying on the floor. I tried to pick her up. I tried to...
Okay, what I want you to do, I want you to go over and see if she's breathing.
I can't tell. Please send somebody here who knows what they're doing.
I understand that, sir. I have somebody on the way. But if she's not breathing, you need to help her breathe. You need to find out whether or not she's breathing. Go over to her. Roll her, put her on... Sir.
Oh, my God. Oh, please send somebody.
Listen to me. You have got to help her. Lean down.
I'm trying. I've been trying to help her.
Lean down and check and see if she's breathing. Look at her chest. See if it's rising.
Doesn't look like it is. I'm scared to death.
He was actually charged with drugs or prescription drugs or drugs, some type of drug charge. He wasn't like charged with her murder or anything like that, or he was just charged with like some type of drug charge. But that was the worst moment of his life, and of course it would be. You know, his girlfriend died in his home, and he found her and had to call 911, and then of course tried to explain all this to the authorities, how she died and what had happened, and he was the one that had the drugs basically. She willingly took them, but he was the one that kind of got her into that from what I read. So of course it's been raining here on and off all day, and it really wasn't supposed to, but now it's pouring, so I did run to get an umbrella. So if you do hear the rain hitting the umbrella in the microphone, I apologize for that. But anyway, they were, Lex and Liz were living in Marietta, Georgia at Lex's condo, and on the night of May 1st, 2003, he called 911 to report that Elizabeth was not breathing, and he tried to do mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, and with no luck, the paramedics showed up and rushed her to the Kennestone Hospital, where she was pronounced dead at the age of 42. The medical examiner listed her death as acute toxicity, which was brought on by a mixture of painkillers and vodka, and the death was ruled an accident. So now, the year before her death, there was actually a domestic dispute at Lex and Liz's townhome, where apparently he had hit her in their garage, and when the police showed up, she had had 2 black eyes and I guess some cuts, and Lex had went to jail at that point and was charged with domestic violence. Now, her and Macho Man were married from 1984, then they divorced in 1992, and then Elizabeth did marry another guy, Kerry Lebetsky, I think, or something like that, Lebutsky. He was an attorney from Florida, but she wasn't married to him very long. I think that's the marriage that she was in when she started dating Lex. But her and that guy split in April of '99. I think that was when their divorce was final, April of '99, and she had been dating Lex, and I think she went to be with Lex right after that. Elizabeth had been working in WCW for several years, and she actually went overseas with Lex Luger to do the All-Star Tour in Europe in November of 2022 and December of 2022. But she did not appear in a single show. She just went with Lex over there, and he ended up losing the World Heavyweight Championship to matches with Sting during that tour. Her final appearance in WCW was on May 29th of 2000 on an episode of Monday Night Nitro, and she just quietly left WCW on August 17th of 2000 when her contract expired. Soon after that, she went to work for the gym that Lex Luger and Sting opened and owned during their heyday in WCW. But yeah, it's crazy. I don't really have to talk a whole lot during this video or give a bunch of information, because if you're a wrestling fan, you pretty much know everything that I have said and would say. But it's crazy to be here right now. I think this may be her mother over here, Marianne Hewlett. I know it was said that she referred to her mom as mother. But yeah, the lovely Miss Elizabeth right here, Elizabeth Ann Hewlett, born November 19th, 1960, and passed away May 1st, 2003. What a shame. But yeah, this was my childhood. She was my first crush. I'll never forget watching wrestling all those years and with all those guys, Junkyard Dog, Hogan, Andre, Roddy Piper, Mr. Wonderful, Macho Man, Big John Studd, everybody. Wrestling was really something else back then. And these guys and these gals even were larger than life. Like Miss Elizabeth. It's a lot of fond memories. I was actually at WrestleMania 3 when Randy faced Ricky the Dragon Steamboat and had probably the best match in wrestling history. And Elizabeth, of course, was there. And we've seen that live. That was really something that I'll never forget. But yeah, crazy being here. I've waited a long time to come and pay my respects to Miss Elizabeth, who was a pop culture icon from the 80s and 90s, and my first crush. So, rest in peace, Miss Elizabeth, and thanks for the memories.